They say he had a smile that could calm a storm, a boyish charm, a laugh that made people forget he carried a gun. They called him a hero, a rebel, a legend who stood against corruption. But that's not who Billy the Kid was. The truth? Billy wasn't fighting for justice. He was fighting to survive, and he didn't care who he had to bury along the way. History has a habit of picking favorites. It loves a good outlaw story, especially when the outlaw looks like a harmless kid. But behind that grin was a cold mind, quick to anger, quicker to kill. By 17 he had already spilled blood. Not in a noble duel, not in defense of the weak, but in the dark, over a simple argument that turned into murder. Yet newspapers turned him into a celebrity, a gunslinging Robin Hood, a symbol of defiance. They hid the bodies he left behind, forgot the families destroyed, replaced the truth with a lie America wanted to believe. Because legends sell. Dead men don't speak. And Billy the Kid, well, he knew how to make people dead. This isn't the story you grew up with. This isn't the Wild West Hollywood promised. This is the truth. The story of a killer with a famous nickname, and the country that fell in love with the monster it created. Billy the Kid. The smiling face of the biggest lie in Western history. And now, it's time to bury the myth. And dig up the man. Before he was Billy the Kid, he was just a boy named Henry McCarty. No gang. No guns. No legend. Just a skinny, fatherless kid in a world that didn't care whether he lived or died. His mother, the only person who ever fought for him, coughed her lungs away in a small New Mexico shack. Tuberculosis. A slower killer than any six-shooter. Billy watched death come for her, day by day, helpless, powerless, angry. After she was gone, he was alone. A 12-year-old with nothing but hunger and fear. And in places like Silver City, fear doesn't keep you safe. Fear makes you pray. He tried to be the good kid, washing dishes, sweeping floors just to survive. But good doesn't last in a place ruled by thieves and drunks. The world pushed him, right into the arms of trouble. The first crime was small, a sack of flour from a local store. Not exactly outlaw material. But once you take something, people stop seeing you as innocent. And once they stop seeing you as innocent, you stop seeing yourself that way too. Soon he was stealing food, clothes, whatever kept him breathing. And the law? They didn't see a starving orphan. They saw a criminal. Rather than die in a cell, Billy did what he'd spend the rest of his short life doing: he ran. From that moment on, Henry McCarty was dead. Buried without a grave. And Billy the Kid, the one the world would come to know, was born in the dirt behind him. People love to talk about the legend that came next. The hero. The outlaw with a smile and a heart of gold. But it started right here. A kid cornered by a world that taught him only one rule. Survive, or be another unmarked grave in the desert. Billy chose to survive. At any cost. Billy didn't go looking for violence. Violence came knocking first. He drifted from town to town, trying to disappear, trying to be no one. But the West had a way of naming you long before you named yourself. He fell in with a rough crowd, men who didn't care if he was too young to shave. They cared only that he could ride fast, and that he wasn't afraid to break the law. At first he was just a lookout. The kid who whistled if a deputy got too close. But a life of crime is like a steep canyon trail. Once you take that first step, gravity does the rest. The turning point came in a dusty saloon, lit by lamplight and whiskey fumes. A blacksmith named Cahill, big, loud, and mean, decided the scrawny kid was someone he could bully. He called him a rat, spat in his face, threw him to the floor and slammed a boot into his ribs. In that moment, Billy learned a truth that would define the rest of his life. If you're small, you strike first. And you strike hard. He scrambled to his feet, pulled a single-shot pistol from his belt. One pull of the trigger. The echo faded, and a grown man lay dying on the barroom floor. Billy stared at his own trembling hands. A boy holding a weapon meant for men. There was no going back now. Not to the boy he used to be. Not to the life he would never have again. The newspapers ate it up. Billy the Kid, they called him. A name sharp enough to make lawmen nervous. And Billy? He leaned into the fear. Every town he entered, every outlaw he rode with, every gun he picked up. It all pushed him toward a destiny built by bullets and betrayal. The hero people would later invent, that grinning cowboy in the dime novels, was just a mask. Behind it was a teenager who had taken a life and now had to spend the rest of his own making sure no one took his. Billy the Kid wasn't born a killer. But from that night on, death followed him like a shadow. Justice in New Mexico wasn't written in books. It was written in blood, and it could be bought cheap. The Lincoln County War, a battle not for honor, not for land, but for control of every dollar that passed through the territory. Two factions. Two criminal empires wearing the thin disguise of business. And the law? It sided with whoever paid better. Billy found himself standing with the regulators, a ragtag group who believed in one thing. If the law is corrupt, then the outlaw becomes the judge. He didn't join them out of loyalty or politics. He joined because the men who murdered his only real friend, a merchant named John Tunstall, had the law on their side. Revenge is a fire that doesn't burn out. It spreads. Billy swore they would pay. Every last one. So the kid went to work. One ambush after another. Gunfights that left the dust red. A list of names crossed out by muzzle flash. Word spread fast. Billy the Kid wasn't just a runaway anymore. He was a ghost with pistols, a smiling death that rode on horseback. Men twice his age, twice his size, twice his reputation, fell to a boy who refused to die quietly. New Mexico's governor declared him a menace. Cattle barons put up money to see him dead. Sheriffs formed posses just to chase his shadow. But Billy seemed untouchable. He rode through the chaos like a man who believed bullets were for other people. Yet every victory only tightened the noose. The war wasn't just against rival gunmen. It was against the entire system. And systems don't forgive. They erase. Billy didn't know it yet, but the choices he made in this war were carving his grave one gunshot at a time. The regulators were winning battles, but Billy was losing his soul. Because revenge never ends where you think it will. It always demands one more life. Sometimes, it demands yours. The newspapers called him charming, fearless, a boy with a laugh too bright for the darkness he carried. They printed drawings of his smile, not the bodies he left behind. Billy the Kid, a name that leapt off front pages and into the fantasies of every dreamer who hated authority. Railroad workers told stories about him around campfires. Children played pretend, shooting invisible sheriffs in dusty streets. Women whispered his name like a sin they wished they could touch. The outlaw became America's favorite rebel. A romantic villain in a land desperate for legends. But fame is a liar. Every headline made Billy a bigger threat. Every campfire tale recruited new enemies. Every embellished story convinced powerful men that the kid needed to vanish from history, permanently. Yet Billy leaned into the myth. He rode into saloons with a grin, befriended ranch hands and barkeeps, danced with senoritas until the sun rose. He lived like a man who believed death was a rumor. But the truth? Every sunrise could have been his last. The kid was no longer fighting for survival. He was performing. A star in a bloody show with no closing act. His bounty climbed. More guns aimed his way. His circle grew smaller. Trust became a luxury. Still, the legend spread. Because the West didn't want heroes, it wanted entertainment. And Billy gave them a show. But myths cast long shadows. And in one of them stood a man who would change everything. A sheriff whose skill matched Billy's daring. A hunter who wouldn't be fooled by charm. Pat Garrett. Billy didn't know it yet, but the man coming for him didn't want a legend. He wanted a body. Billy the Kid was finally out of luck. Caught. Shackled. Sentenced to hang until his feet kicked dust for the last time. The newspapers cheered. The governor promised justice. And Sheriff Pat Garrett, the former friend turned hunter, had delivered his prize. But Billy had survived too much to let a rope decide his ending. While the guards mocked him, treating him like a caged child playing outlaw, Billy waited. Not for a miracle. For a mistake. April 28, 1881. A single deputy escorts him across the courthouse. Billy jokes, asks for a moment, and the outlaw smile returns. Then steel flashes. A stolen gun fires. One lawman falls. Then another, rushing up the stairs too late. Billy acts fast. He frees himself, grabs a shotgun, and stands at the top of the staircase like a devil daring the world to challenge him. Anyone else would run. Billy takes his time. He tries on a sheriff's hat. Walks into the street as people scatter, his chains dragging behind him like discarded promises. He mounts a horse and rides, a dead man with a stolen future. Word spread like wildfire. The kid escaped the hangman. 2 deputies dead. Billy rides on. Fame became infamy. Admiration turned to fear. And Pat Garrett? He wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Because when a legend breaks out of his own execution, every bullet in the territory gets aimed right at his heart. Billy believed he'd cheated death forever. But death was patient. And it was coming with a familiar face. Pat Garrett knew the stories. The songs. The crowds cheering Billy's name. He didn't care. He wasn't hunting a hero. He was stopping a man who left graves behind him like breadcrumbs. Every sheriff, every deputy buried because they tried to uphold the law, their ghosts rode with Garrett. Billy's charm fooled the public. But Garrett had seen the real kid, calculating, fearless. A boy who understood exactly what he was doing every time he pulled a trigger. So Garrett followed the trail of bodies and whispers to Fort Sumner, a home Billy always crawled back to. Familiar faces, trusted friends. Weakness. Night fell. A house lit by a single candle. Billy slipped inside, laughing softly, asking an old friend for a piece of meat. Unarmed. At ease. Believing he was safe. Garrett waited in the shadows. Silent. Breathing slow. A hunter who couldn't afford doubt. Billy stepped into the room. He sensed someone, a ripple in the darkness. Fingers twitched toward where a gun should have been. A single gunshot ripped the quiet open. Then silence. Billy the kid, the boy bandit who mocked death, finally met it. No duel at high noon. No dramatic last stand. Just a bullet in the dark. Quick, clinical. The way legends never imagine. Garrett holstered his gun, knowing what came next wouldn't be praise. Because killing a myth makes you the villain in the story. The world mourned the outlaw, not the lives he shattered. Not the lawman who never made it home. Not the families forever marked by his grin. History crowned Billy the hero. And painted Pat Garrett as the traitor. But the truth? Garrett wasn't hunting fame. He was preventing more funerals. And legends, they don't bleed for justice. They bleed for themselves. Billy the Kid died that night, but his story was just getting started. The newspapers didn't tell the truth. They told a better version. A charming outlaw. A rebel with a grin. A legend too wild to tame. America wanted a hero who spit in the face of power. A fearless boy who didn't bow to corrupt lawmen or greedy businessmen or the government expanding west like a hungry beast. Hollywood saw that desire and fed it. Billy became a symbol, the underdog gunslinger, the laughing young rebel sticking it to the system. But the real Billy? He wasn't fighting tyranny. He was running from consequences. Every retelling erased another body. Every movie polished more blood off his hands. Every actor playing him made the murder look noble. Soon the outlaw became a martyr. Not a criminal, a celebrity of the deadliest kind. The myth replaced the man. And people loved the myth more. Because it's easier to cheer a killer when the victims are forgotten. When the bullets are cool. When justice becomes a punchline and violence becomes entertainment. Billy the Kid didn't survive Pat Garrett's bullet. But the lie of Billy? That lives on. Bigger. Brighter. Untouchable. History has a strange habit. It remembers the villains it enjoys and buries the ones it should honor. Billy the Kid didn't win the West. He won the narrative. So what do we remember? A smiling boy on horseback. A charming rebel with a gun. A hero America cheered. But beneath the legend was a boy who killed to survive. A man whose charm hid a darkness few wanted to see. The kid became larger than life. And in doing so, he buried the truth under fame, myth, and silver screen applause. Pat Garrett did what history called betrayal. But he wasn't stopping a hero. He was stopping a monster. And yet, the world still celebrates the killer instead of the consequences he left behind. So the next time someone tells you Billy the Kid was a hero, remember the story history almost forgot. The smiles, the songs, the movies, they're all convenient lies. The question is this: do we honor legends, or the truth behind them? If you want to uncover more forgotten stories, hit that like button, subscribe, and step into the untold Wild West with us. Because the truth doesn't always wear a smiling face.